Well, hey everyone, my name is Nathan Jones, and if you're new here, welcome. I like to talk about all things movies, specifically Blu-rays, but today we are going to be continuing our film journey. This time I have my good friend Kenny, who has a wonderful channel, Kenny VFX. And Kenny, I've known you actually. I've seen you for probably like a year and a half, 2 years now.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and so it's really a pleasure to finally like meet you and finally talk to you, and we get to do a film journey together. You doing good?
yeah. Good, thanks. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this. Been watching it for a while, but yeah, really tuned in at the beginning of lockdown, and yeah,
Lockdown saved us. We got
it
to,
has, yeah.
yeah. Everyone who is familiar with this show, we are doing a film journey. So that means we're going to be asking our guest Kenny about a lot of his memories with films and where he is today with movies, right? Of course. And so, yeah. So my first question is always, what is your earliest memories with film?
Well, I guess born in the 80s, so right at the beginning. So mostly, we weren't really a cinema going family, but I was a massive fan of He-Man. And so kind of, I think my first journey to the cinema was probably Masters of the Universe, like, which probably wasn't quite right for the age I was at the time.
Right.
Yeah, there's scenes where Skeletor like sucks the life force from the Empress and that, and I just remember being terrified by that. So I don't think my parents vetted it particularly well beforehand.
Typical childhood trauma.
Yeah, a little bit of childhood trauma. I think that's kind of most of my memories of films when I was a kid. I've kind of like are linked to kind of just being terrified.
Yeah.
Like just certain moments of just kind of like, oh, maybe you shouldn't have been watching this all the way along. You're like, oh, this film's fine. And then just the moment, like Raiders of the Lost Ark or Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where Judge Doom's eyes pop out. That was another one. That was kind of what we borrowed from next door. They'd rented it from Blockbuster. And was like, oh yeah, we'll take a look at that. Yeah, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Yeah, and again,
it's a cartoon. Nothing bad's going to happen.
Exactly. And the acid bath and everything at the end, and where they kind of it gets rolled over and his eyes pop out. But yeah, so that then we didn't really go to the cinema, and there kind of weren't really a film watching family. But I kind of tended to watch films with my friends. So whenever I'd go around or borrow something for them, kind of like another one is the TV movie for It.
Oh yeah, of course. The really early 90s when that came out?
Or is that really early 90s? Yeah, I think so, yeah. So late 80s, early 90s. Yeah, but again, yeah. I was being babysitted by my friend's older sister, and she was quite a bit older. But I remember we went to Blockbuster again, and we're like, oh, we'll rent that. Well, it's got a clown in it. And then, yeah, next thing you know, I'm crying, and she's getting told off by her mum in the kitchen. But so there are nicer memories in amongst that.
Sure. Not as interesting, or probably not as the eyes popping out, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was having a conversation with my partner the other day, and I was like, "You just do a bit of animation, or you just on the channel," and she's like, "You never make anything nice. Like, when you make some flowers," or I'm like, "Probably." And right now, I'm linking it back to those early memories. But yeah, we did go like Disney. That kind of played quite a large proponent in my growing up. So yeah, Aladdin. By that time, I was probably 10. Lion King, Rescuers Down Under. We did see at the cinema. So there was quite a lot of Disney, kind of just safe. I think I was such a scaredy cat, a bit of a crier when I was a kid. But my mum was just Disney safe. We can. So yeah, that's most of my memories are kind of linked with those kind of films. it wasn't kind of much later that I probably got into film properly, but yeah, kind of. I do remember my dad also vetting films for me as well. So I saw Terminator quite young, but like the first one, and I remember him watching that before I was allowed to watch it. And I think he kind of gave it, okay, I think Kenny can handle this one. But by that time, again, I think it was like 10 or something, because it was on like the BBC. Yeah, I think most of, can you see these images and like the Terminator and mostly the idea of films when I was a kid. So I wasn't necessarily allowed to watch them, but like we went to the cinema and I remember picking up a magazine and just looking at all the images and being fascinated by like, what are these, what all these films, but obviously they weren't really suitable for me at the time. So I think there was like Silence of the Lambs and like a Batman Returns and Tough Judgment Day. It was like 92. But I kind of cut all these images out and kind of stuck them in my scrapbook and everything. But it was more, there were I was aware of films that I wasn't allowed to watch, and more of a like films that were kind of out of reach, as it were, or kind of like more of like the imagery of films, but I hadn't ever seen and wouldn't probably see for another few years until I was an adult. Yeah, so I feel like I'm rambling a lot, but like,
no, you're good. Where was that transition? I mean, with the scrapbooks, I mean, you were at least were aware of the things going on in the culture.
Yeah.
Honestly. And when did you get over your scaredy cat nature of maybe some of these like more, I guess, adult themed movies?
Still haven't.
Still haven't.
Still a scaredy cat. I do love horror, but yeah, still got to kind of sometimes build myself up to watch something that I know is going to be quite affecting. Probably still a child, but like I'm about 14. Like the thing with the film distribution was like we always got things about 6 months later, and then you'd have to wait for ages for it to come on to either onto video in Blockbuster, or even longer for it to be on like BBC. Like we had the 4 channels here. Yeah, and so it was probably kind of when I discovered the transition of kind of becoming like I guess like a real film fan, rather than kind of just whatever was fed to me or whatever I kind of saw on a Saturday afternoon.
Right.
Was probably when I saw Reservoir Dogs. Again, it's a film I thought I probably should be watching this, but my parents were out, and it was well, it must have been about 14, 15, and it was on late night Channel 4 here in the UK, and I was kind of like watching it and making sure they weren't home yet from being out, and running back and watching a bit more, and like looking back at it now, I kind of like I think maybe Reservoir Dogs is a bit more. Its reputation probably precedes it, than actually how gory or anything it actually is, because you don't actually see anything in the film. Sorry, yeah. So that was one, and then I discovered a show called Moviedrome here again, like an early 90s show that was on the BBC that got run on Sunday nights. It was like presented by Mark Cousins, who does a lot of the documentary. Did like Women Who Make Film and the history.
Yeah, story of film, Women Who Make Film.
Yeah, so story of film. Yeah, and he would kind of like, they would do like an introduction, and kind of at the same time that Reservoir Dogs was on, Pulp Fiction was on that, and he did like a documentary, and then they kind of, and Leon was the next one they did the next week, and kind of that was my kind of first introduction to like, oh, there's more than these kind of children's films. There's more than Disney. There's more than, and then kind of in those documentaries I mentioned like Luc Besson, but Jean-Luc Godard, and make reference to other filmmakers, John Cassavetes, and then that's when I was hooked. I was like, the expansiveness, and there's all these other films and these other films in other languages, and black and white films and films from long time ago. In fact, you can watch. That was kind of the transition point was Quentin Tarantino, as I think it probably was for quite a lot of
was for
people.
me too. Yeah. Was
you know,
that curation, was that kind of the kind of the spark really for going into, like you were saying, like just you see that reference to another film just based on what maybe Mark Cousins is talking about, or whatever director is talking about whatever movie. There's like, oh, this is actually inspiring the thing that's currently going on. Was it around that time where you just like, you know what, this is something I might look into a little bit more?
Yeah, definitely. It was so then I ended up managing to find a copy of Breathless, and then I'd go through, and I had, back in like the late 90s, although DVDs were around, but they weren't recordable, so we were still using VHS. Right. And then like late night, you kind of go, oh, that film's on, I'll record it, file it away, and I'll watch it. So I had like a vast array of kind of all kinds of directors, all kinds of films that were just in the top of my wardrobe that I'd recorded, and then I'd watch again and again and again. So kind of like there was like Carlito's Way, there was kind of lots of Kubrick in there. Kind of just these things that kind of go, oh, it's a late night film. It's usually going to be something that's either the general population aren't going to watch. It's not the latest big blockbuster. In fact, the BBC want to put prime time, but get all eyes on it. So they're kind of going to, oh, it might be something a bit weirder. So you end up discovering like Videodrome and Fly through that and things like that, and like Polanski and De Palma, all kinds of different things. John Waters. So he was I was kind of voracious, I think that's the word, and kind of like just like watch as much as I can, read as much as I can, and I'm kind of still like that now, but yeah, so I'll just watch anything I could get my hands on. And then at that time I was borrowing films, so like people go like, well, you saw that and you like Tarantino, or maybe I don't know, looking back now, I'm kind of like, that doesn't really make any sense, but you like Tarantino, you like David Lynch.
I know you're saying, those friends, we're friends, like, encouraging you with this too.
I had a couple of good friends back, and I was probably by this point 17, 18. We did a film studies course, kind of like an A-level film studies course, where kind of extracurricular really, but so we went off to do that every week, but they introduced me to like Darren Aronofsky, so Lemmy Pie, and then Requiem for a Dream. David Lynch was another thing I got introduced to. So, for these people, Let It Be Lost Highway, Eraserhead, that kind of thing. But then also, again, remind me of doing the film studies. So at that point, we were going backwards. So at that point, we were doing like film history. So we're doing like starting right at the beginning, like Battleship Potemkin, and moving forward, like so we're watching kind of coming together in the middle. But and I was reading books. I was like the Faber directors books. So you can like Byrne on Byrne, Lynch on Lynch, Von Trier on Von Trier. So anything I could get my hands on, really.
Was the, I know you were saying something about like maybe this being more of an extracurricular like course with your friends and stuff, and just kind of was it like your own like self discovery, just things you were interested in, or was there like any pursuit, maybe going past that class into doing anything particular with film or anything like that?
I think at that time, I always wanted, like from the time I was like Tarantino, I was like, I'd pick up his scripts. So I'd like go to the shop and I bought Reservoir Dogs and I bought Pulp Fiction scripts, and I think I had Pi, like the Pi Diaries book, and the script in the back of that. And I was like self-taught write scripts and kind of quite derivative stuff looking back, and kind of like, oh, I could win an Oscar with this thing, like back when I was like 14, 15. So I've always wanted to go and make films back then, but at least in the UK, you kind of would go to like a careers advisor, and they'd be like, no. Did you realize how hard it is to do that? So, but they didn't tell you that I live in a place called Bournemouth, and we have like a university here, which is kind of like one of the best. Like Edgar Wright went there, and so it's kind of like filmmakers can actual filmmakers went there, but they kind of, I guess to a certain extent, you weren't told that you could do it, so you kind of ruled back from that a bit and kind of just went off into office work. Until I went to university a bit later. I went to the Arts Institute, which is the university, and at that point, I think I got a bit distracted from. I was like, I want to go here. I want to be a filmmaker, but by going there, it kind of opened up my eyes a bit more to art and like versus how I became like a software engineer, like programming computers and kind of more the study of like art and artists like art history and things like that, rather than, so it kind of waylaid me a bit. But at that time I was still massively into kind of more into music videos, like into imagery. So at that point in time, it was like the time of Michel Gondry and Spike Jonze and Chris Cunningham, being like the big three music video directors. So kind of obsessed with them, and then obviously they wade into making their own movies, like Spike Jonze and Michel Gondry specifically. So I never really lost that, but it kind of maybe got waylaid a bit from it. But I think this point in time, I've very much come round to, thanks to channels like yourself and Elliot, and like the Blu-ray buying, and like actually kind of go, oh no, film is what I love. And I think it took maybe the last couple of years, the last year or so, to kind of go, oh, what do I actually love? And kind of I've returned back to that kind of time, like when I was at early 20s, before I kind of went off on a different path.
Yeah, an adjacent one though. I mean, it was
an adjacent one, but I think like actually I was always kind of in love with just all the ideas and just films generally. I can't explain it more than that, really. Just film as a medium and the people who make film and everything about it. And I think I went off on a journey for about 10 years, and then I've kind of very much returned to that now.
Well, I mean, this is just obviously just based on context clues for me, but it sounds a lot like you like the details in some of these things, and you've kind of started noticing those details more within film again, because you're saying you were kind of obsessed with the image, like when you're talking about Spike Jonze and art and just the mechanics of how everything kind of has come together, and like there's that creative process, and I feel like there's that, like, how does all these pieces, these puzzle pieces, like come together to make this thing that is highly creative. And I think movies are another form of that, of course, in their own special way. So I feel like maybe that's what happened. I don't know, but
it was always, I guess I'm kind of having a little bit of an epiphany, but I never kind of, I guess I never really strayed that far from it. It was always, as you say, like the image. It was always video art or digital art that was maybe an offshoot of, less about the narrative and more about,
the evocative emotion, maybe.
Sorry?
The evocative emotion, or like who's
the evocative emotion,
who's digesting this, who's viewing it, who's listening, what's going on with that, how are you interacting with the piece?
Yeah, exactly. And I think I've actually come kind of realization that many films out there that kind of marry those two worlds together, and and there have been for over 100 years now. It's But yeah, it's very much about the image and about the idea, and how that idea is produced and put forth in just a simple just a simple image, just a simple panning shot, or simple um, cut. You see what I mean? But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the other day I watched something called Hidden. It was on Mubi. I can't remember who the director is now, but there was just a one single shot which I was kind of like, I enjoyed. It's like 20 minutes short, and I enjoyed the short and the lead up. It's by the director who did he's an Iranian director who did This Is Not a Movie. I would have to look his name up, but and it was about a girl living in a village who her family had forbidden her to sing, and they go through, and it's kind of a semi-documentary, but you can't quite tell whether it's real or not.
Right. And like Iranian directors do very, very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, how much is this them kind of setting this up, or how much of this is actually them taking the journey to meet this girl? But it's just like one single shot of just pulling out. So the girl's mother, not giving anything, well, I'm kind of spoiling it, but the girl's mother wouldn't allow her to be seen, but would allow her to be heard. So it was just one shot, and it was like she was under the table and a cloth over the top, and it was pulling out, zooming out from that on that, and I was just like, this is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. And it was just a table top with a cloth on top, but the idea and what that represented and everything was so amazing to me in that moment. I was like, oh yeah, there's nothing better than cinema.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
I mean, honestly, I mean, I feel like a lot of us, I think that's one of those almost unspoken things that you really can't describe, because obviously each of us have our own interactions with, what has happened in our own life, and then what we're watching and how we're interacting with things. And but I feel like that is a very unspoken common thing about a lot of us, maybe, who are watching this right now, is we sometimes just lose ourselves within this world, even if it's fiction or nonfiction, right, with this particular piece. But we kind of embed ourselves with that thing going on, and there you can almost evoke that empathy with what's going on, and like it strikes you, and it hits you, and you understand it, but you really can't describe it. And that's totally fine, though. And I think that's the reason why I think a lot of us love this medium so much, but that I have some things that remind me of, like, oh yeah, this is just a reminder of why I love this stuff so much, is why film is so powerful, I think.
It's definitely, yeah. I bought the on your recommendation mostly, and because it's region free, is the Agnes Varda box set from Criterion.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's absolutely amazing.
I need to watch it.
I'm making my way through it slowly.
Yeah.
Just jumping around, but I don't know if you've seen Faces Places.
I haven't. That's one I've been recommended highly from a friend. So
I won't give away anything, but there's one moment in it, and I can't quite tell again whether it's real or
staged.
Kind of, sorry,
staged fiction, or if
it's kind of the staged fiction, yeah. Whether because she goes to a particular place in it, and yeah, and what happens there, I was like, oh, this seems really kind of awful in this moment, but it's I don't think it is staged. If it is staged, it's amazing. If it's not staged, it's awful, but still amazing that it was captured in this moment. But it's the narrative that builds up to this moment that the director and Varda's going to this place to meet this particular person, and it doesn't turn out the way she thinks it's going to turn out. But it could easily have been manipulated. And I love that. I mean, there's no other medium that could work in like building up a story and then having that payoff, especially in that kind of documentarian way that the hidden short film and Faces Places do so well. But yeah, some of those films are absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's brilliant when something can it doesn't even need explanation. It just clicks with you when it's happening. And I think that's something that it happens rarely, which is actually, I think, really important, because we can't interact with every piece that we see or every movie that we watch the same way, because obviously whatever's going on in our life, I feel like with what's going on with your emotions, also like who you're interacting with, who you've interacted with, really can color that experience you have with whatever you're doing, and also like what time of your life is you're watching this. Because I know I've revisited films from when I was younger and being like, wow, I didn't get this at all, but now it makes so much more sense to me. Very common example for me is like I tear up on a lot of things now, just because I'm like I don't have any, maybe if there's something sad with a family happens, or like there's a child and maybe a father-daughter thing. I'm like, I don't have a daughter, but like for some reason this really gets to me, because like I could see myself doing something similar, or I could be there and be like, yeah, this is going to get to me. So I mean, it doesn't even have to be something narrative, but like even something so subtle, like you're saying, the tablecloth. It's like it's still there, though.
Is anything like father-son stories or father brothers? I've got two brothers. This gets to me, and when we went to see Les Mis, like the Hugh Jackman Les Mis, at the cinema, and my girlfriend had to carry me out at the end of it. I was sobbing. I think I was sobbing for about 2 days. But that's just, I mean, that's kind of the other end of the scale, I guess, from something like an Iranian short film or Agnes Varda. It's like this big production with massive stars in it. Right. But right down the scale, it just proves that if something gets to you, then it can. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So this actually, I think this is a good segue to, because I know we mentioned a little bit about some of the things you've been watching recently. What have you been currently watching? Is there anything that you've kind of been drawn to at the moment?
I kind of split both ways, because I go to the cinema a lot, so I've kind of tried to keep up with everything that's new that's coming out. We don't really have any small cinemas here, so it's the multiplex down the road, really. So we've seen Bond, going to see Eternals next week, just kind of the big blockbusters.
Right.
I went and saw Dune last week. Yeah, absolutely. Just blew me out. Fantastic. From beginning to end, like that. I feel like the cinemas and multiplexes like that do have their place, because once in a while, like they'll just deliver something like that, or they'll deliver something like I really enjoyed Tenet from last year. Or some smart blockbuster. But equally, I love the Marvel films. I think what they've built over the last 10 years is unheard of, unprecedented before. Just to the moment of like Endgame, and watching that in the opening night in the cinema, it's kind of like, I mean, I've spoken to friends about it, but kind of like our generation Star Wars, or kind of going, oh my god, were you there when Endgame at the end? And you go, yeah, I was there. I remember it. It was amazing. But then I've kind of got my Criterions coming in, and so tomorrow I'm getting Fantastic Mr. Fox, the Wes Anderson version. So
there goes Mishima.
As soon as it's the one I was like, as soon as that gets speaking to you before, saying that because I don't have the multi-region, but I've been waiting for Fantastic Mr. Fox to be released in the UK. But as soon as it came up, I was like, yeah, we're buying that. So any Terrence Malick that's on the Criterion, I'll buy it immediately. I've also but getting back to the question, kind of got my movie subscription. I don't think the subscription service you have in the US as well.
Yeah, we have movie here.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's the best £10 I spend a month. It's so eye-opening, really. As I say, I watched Hidden yesterday, and there's kind of like a Hungarian animation series on there at the moment, or just like short animations, and those have been brilliant. So you kind of don't really know what you're going to get, but you kind of go, okay, that sounds interesting, I'll watch that. And sometimes it's not so good, but more often than not, I've watched something I found really fulfilling. I watched the reviews on this are a bit uneven, but I watched End of Love by Mark Webber the other day.
I know Mark Webber, but I haven't seen that.
Yeah, it's about his partner passing away, and about him bringing up his child alone. But it's quite a quiet, subtle movie. But it's like we were saying just a minute ago, kind of just got me, just hit me in the heart, and I was like, okay, that was a worthwhile, hour and a half, 2 hours to watch. But then there's stuff I haven't quite built up the bravery to watch. Like there's a state funeral, like a 3-hour reproduction of Stalin's funeral, which I kind of like really want to watch, but I'm a bit like, I've got to be in the right mood for that one.
Yeah, you got to be in the right mood for that. Yeah, for sure.
It's kind of it's not just a vast array of stuff on that. But yeah, it's kind of what I've been watching at the moment. It's just whatever comes my way, really. Same as I always have. It's just if it's a blockbuster, like I've got plans tonight probably to watch Bloodshot with Vin Diesel.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's on Netflix, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch it. I wanted to watch it. I watched Charlie's Angels the other day, the newer one. Just because, like, well, I kind of want to watch that, but like, I mean, I can say I've watched it, and then I can go and watch something else that probably I can expect to be a lot better as a Planet.
Right, yeah. You got levels to it, right?
Yeah, you got to take the rough and the smooth. You got to watch I think sometimes you got to watch the not so good, so then you can appreciate when something amazing.
Right. I know exactly what I'm talking about. That feels like, especially with like movies in the cinema, right? Whereas like, because cinemas have just really recently just been coming back more so. I think the first movie I watched back in the theater was Mortal Kombat, a movie that's like super fun, not good, but like it's a fun movie. But I'm not expecting. I don't want to watch, a really big drama right now at that moment, because everyone's like, no, I just want to experience a movie, like something like that. And I feel like that's like Bloodshot. That's movies that are adjacent to that kind of realm. And then you get something like Dune, and then it comes up, and you're like, yes, this is a smarter blockbuster. And when that comes around, it's like you appreciate that stuff more, because you can it's like, this is rare, this doesn't happen very often. So not discounting all the art house films that we all watch, but like things that are like, it's almost like you have to go to the theater to really feel that energy, I guess. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah. I think because I went with my partner to see Dune, and she was really excited for it, but that's it's a huge blockbuster. The trailers looked beautiful. It's got an amazing cast in it, but sometimes I feel like, and that particular film is fantastic because it's delivered high science fiction, like really complicated storylines to somebody who might just, to people who might just gone like, oh, I fancy watching a science fiction film, but it's really smart and it's quite slow, and you've kind of got to pay attention to it. But you know, and movie, so you know, using that as a kind of a touchstone, but it's something I watch on my own. Like, I'm not necessarily interested in watching, you know, the latest. I don't know. Again, as we're talking about Agnes Varda, you know, or whoever, or a French New Wave film from the 1960s, but was quite happy to go to the cinema and sit through 2.5 hour film that's quite slow. And so I think people have an appetite for these things. It's just how they're packaged and how they're delivered.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, just going back to like when you were talking about Tarantino, it's almost like a bridge between, you know, if you are interested and you did enjoy what you saw, you can start going deeper into these different pockets. And then, not be as crazy as us and all the people watching right now. I know all of us are like, we got to watch everything from everything. But you know, for like the normal movie goer, the person who's watching this, because Dune, there's going to be a lot of those people who are just going to be like, this looks like an event, like let's go to this, and this might awaken some people. You know, like I guess like one of his movies, another like Arrival would be a good example.
Yeah, I love that film.
It's fantastic, and I've talked to so many people who aren't really movie people. And that movie has come up a few times, and they're like, yeah, I really, really liked it. It's like, oh, well, if you're curious, like you should go down this route or whatever, you know, and it's always like a good conversation piece. And I think those movies are really important. And I think, so I'm happy the cinemas are back at the end of the day. And I hope that people who are watching this are able to at least go to some movies, because there's been a lot of good ones. And I enjoyed the new Bond quite a bit. I thought that was a good send off for Daniel Craig, because everyone who knows this, this is his last movie he's in. So I'm not saying anything else, but you know, it's like, you know, he's passing the torch. Because there's going to be a new Bond probably. So you know, whenever that happens. But it's a movie though. Like it was beautiful. It was like it was a fun adventure piece, and I loved it. And that's what I want to see more. And that's what the theater's for, really. So
the question, I know you're supposed to be into, but the question for you, like here at least, because I guess to a certain extent, Bond is seen as a British franchise, at least here in the UK, although it's got money from all over the world, is that it was seen as be heralded as the savior of cinema, and that kind of, I totally understand where that's coming from. Like, it's a big money film that will get bums on seats, so you know, essentially saving cinemas. But I don't know, but that kind of puts, as like yourself, and again as your viewers and everybody, there's people who kind of maybe go off the beaten track a lot more, maybe don't get to watch what they want at the cinema all the time. The savior of cinema kind of got my back up a little bit, and I don't know if that makes sense. Kind of like, well, cinema is more than this massive film, but I understand that essentially is a lot of jobs and a lot of people, you know, had a lot riding on that film. But it's kind of like, whether if that film had failed or people didn't return to the cinema, would cinema be dead?
Yeah.
And I kind of a question that I kind of like. I thought it was quite an old way of looking at cinema, in a way, when, you know, the cinema or filmmaking has been quite democratized now, so it's far more open to, you know, somebody in, in Africa or Asia or wherever,
Their phone.
just on your phone, to
Yeah.
make a film and get that distributed, either through something like just on YouTube or some other method. But I found it quite an interesting kind of dichotomy, kind of like, well, that's, yes, it will save cinemas and the old way of doing things and the movie industry as it's been, but would it necessarily, cinema will still exist without Bond?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it was just an interesting thought. It kind of riled me a little bit, but I completely, when I was there watching it, I was like, oh yeah, I get this. Yeah, it's actually fine.
Yeah.
And they say something like June is far more cerebral than the Bond franchise. And I was like, well, okay, films like this wouldn't exist if people didn't come back to cinemas to watch these massive blockbusters, to go and watch Eternals,
or I mean, you can even think about something that's not working right now. It's massive. That new Ridley Scott film, which is is it In the Name of the King?
Called The Last Duel here, I think.
The Last Duel, that's what it's called. The Last Duel. A movie that from everybody who I've talked to is like, it's a great movie. But it's not making any money. So it's almost like I feel like the culture is very interesting, because I on one hand, I think of all the stuff that we've all collectively went through over the last 2 years, especially. It's almost like akin to thinking back to like maybe the like late 20s, early 30s, when the Great Depression really occurred and like made a lot of things around the world kind of go down. But a lot of people escape to the movies to really feel a sense of like collective like unity, and also like, hey, I can step away from the reality of what's going on in the world, and like really just like kind of enjoy this spectacle, this big thing, which is where obviously we get, and like we get those big epics that were around in the 20s, Douglas Fairbanks stuff, or we could even get stuff like Spartacus or Ben-Hur in like the 50s and 60s, right? But it's like it's this weird cyclical thing, I feel like, just depending on what's going on in the time period, and like what's going on in the world. Like there's the social and political aspects that I feel like really play a big role, and then you just add in to what's going on now with social media and with smartphones and just the accessibility. It's almost like we have so much access to so many things that it's almost like there's these two competing, like you were saying, like there's this old worldview of like, there's these spectacle films like Bond or something. And then, you get, something like, I guess I could use like Steven Soderbergh's film that I can't remember off the top of my head, where he shot it on an iPhone, where you can, I can't remember what it's called. The life
Side Effects, is that one of them?
Maybe. He may have done two, but regardless, I know people who are watching this can name it down in the comment section. But it's this weird thing that like we're in a weird position where we're having to figure out like what that balance is, like, because all of us have our own. I mean, as collectors, I'm going on a rant myself. As collectors, I feel like a lot of us, we have our own worlds. Of course, we share that on YouTube. We can share that in groups that we're in, instant messaging and whatnot. But at the same time, a lot of these things that we're enjoying, we're doing it kind of it's a solipsistic kind of thing. We're doing it by ourselves, right? But obviously, sometimes we're able to share it. But it's a weird thing with movies. That's something that I've always thought about, is at the end of the day, with this collection, like, what do I want to do with it? Like, or how would I interact with the world with all these stories that I'm interacting with? You could go the creative route, right? So you could be a part of that, and work with it, or work with art or that's related to it. Or you can, for instance, for me, I'm not somebody who is necessarily artistic, but I would go the route of like, well, I want to share this in some instance, and so I might go the route when I'm older, and I might have a little bit more money, where I could have like a little small theater, and I can show these things, or whatever anyone wants to watch.
Cool.
And so it's this weird thing. It's like this balance of like, is this a very like we're doing all these things for ourselves and we're trying to interact with the world with it, but also at the same time, what is everyone else doing who aren't like us, who but are, you know, coming in and out of this world sometimes, depending on what life looks like. So big philosophical stuff.
I never realized I contradicted myself, because, you know, I was talking about Endgame, and I talk about that moment where, you know, there's moments in, you know, in Endgame where you kind of like the crowd in
Yeah, it's the zeitgeist, the cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah, you're part of it. You know,
yeah.
June is has been a bit like that. Bond was like that. I know it kind of contradicts myself, and I'm probably a bit curmudgeonly, like kind of like, well, no, cinema will always be cinema, and it was before, and it will be after, and but yeah, there is something. You're quite right, kind of sultry, not sultry, that's the wrong word, solitary about you know, watching a film. You know, you can watch it with somebody, but your experience of that. But, you know, sometimes going to the cinema and watching something as a group, you know, because that kind of escapism as a community is something that a lot of cinemas do offer a lot. And I do, and again, like, I think that the cinema, you know, a little bit of money in cinema, it's such a cool idea. I hadn't really considered that, you know, as a collector, because I feel like, I mean, I've got nephews. I have children myself, but nephews, but they intend to. They're not watching films like, you know, maybe yourself or what I did when I was a child.
Right.
You know, behind the sofa, cowering. But like they'll watch it in like
they'll do that.
like they'll just watch it in like stages, or they just won't watch it. You know, they'll watch 10 minutes, and then the attention will be completely like taken off by something else. And I'll be like, oh, did you enjoy that film? And they'd be like, oh, well, yeah, I watched part of it. It was all right. And I'm like, you know. So I think will become a time where kind of like almost film historians, like the collections will become like, well, you know, there's these films, there was this, and this, you know, because I would hate to see a lot of it lost.
Yeah, of course. I think a lot of us would feel the same way.
Yeah, it would be awful. But, you know, because just for the fact that for a dying interest in it, I just, having grown up with film and with cinema, and having been like, consuming it so much in all, you know, streaming services now, or VHS or DVD, you know, cinema. And I don't know that culture in, at least in my nephew's generation, who's like 7 or 8 now. But I don't know if it's just them as a unit, or it's across the board, because whether it's going to the cinema or sitting down with watching a film is something that's done.
Yeah, it doesn't resonate with them as much. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's interesting too, because I mean, I think about it, because I mean, not even just your nephew around that time period. Like I'm thinking more of, I mean, I teach, and so I teach about a decade, a little bit more older than the people that I'm talking to, that I'm teaching. And there's quite a bit of differences between any kind of conversation that, I mean, if it's outside of obviously the subject that I'm talking about, if we're just kind of interacting and just talking about the things we're interested in, it's very interesting to see. You know, that I wouldn't say it's a divide necessarily. It's just more of a whatever has. It's almost like, you know, how us growing up is more like there's a TV guide. You know, we have limited amount of resources. These are the things that we are going to access when we have the time to do it. Things were a little slower. And now it's almost like there's so much thrown at everybody. And it's the same with this, right? Behind us, right? There's so much, like right now we're in the middle of like a shit ton of sales. There's also like, how many movies is everyone who's watching this right now? How many movies do you have on your shelf that you haven't got around to?
Yeah.
It's kind of absurd, but like at the same time, obviously we are going to do that eventually, but we don't know how
Mhm.
long this is going to last, right? Which is probably another reason why we're just so excited about it all. But I think it's interesting to kind of see, those different generational things. I mean, not even with people our age. It's like there's people who are older and like how they interact with formats. Like I
Yeah.
know, for instance, my father, he doesn't access the internet at all ever, and still doesn't really mess with it, which is really interesting because I know he still uses VHS to record things sometimes on
Wow.
cable television, and I have to interact with him and like like, hey, this we don't have those RVC cables anymore, so we gotta switch over to the HDMI. Is like I had to like he's got a new flat screen TV or something, and I have to buy an adapter for those those cables to make sure that it fits into another HDMI converter, and then it goes into that. And he just like doesn't get it. But I mean, and honestly, it's not even that complicated. It's they've simplified everything with things. But I think it's that and obviously these are everybody who's listening, these are all testimonies. This is not everybody in these groups. We're not trying to say that, but it is interesting to see these differences, I think, and respect it, and then also kind of just see where that common ground can lie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's weird because I was you're saying about having been a bit slower, I guess, and having the TV guide, and I was watching the interview again with Mark Cousins because I was come to chat to you today, and you're saying that you're not hungry, but there's still so much pizza. It's like I can't possibly watch anything yet more, but there's all this good stuff over here.
yeah.
I think that's what stuff is like now. But you say like, as I had my VHSs, I would record something, it would sit there until I had time to watch it, and then I would sit down and watch it in its entirety with no distractions really. And that was the blessing I had back then.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And finding time is now in a hectic lifestyle. Well, not that hectic, but
you're all distracted. I mean, we have this, so
yeah,
we have. I mean, I've noticed over maybe the last 5-6 years, especially, like I've had to use my calendar so much to get things, in line with what I'm doing. Is like I envy that time when we were younger, and we're like we can just sit down and for 6 hours and watch this thing or play video games for this amount of time. It's like we don't have to think about anything else.
Yeah, I mean it's a rarity, but like days where I watch like 2 or 3 films, like
rare,
amazing.
Rare.
Yeah, it's like I'm gonna this whole day I don't have to do anything. It's just 3 films in a row back to back, of different varying levels of quality probably, but
right. And we got to do that though. We can't just watch what were you saying, the Stalin's
the 3-hour recreation of Stalin's funeral.
We got to split it up a little bit, right?
I have to watch that now.
Now we got to watch it, everyone.
Yeah.
But you're in a dour mood, everyone. So I guess transitioning in a kind of a botched way, but what are some of your favorite films that you go to often, or what you're liking right now?
Favorite films. That's a hard question. I know that people do have their favorite films. I was thinking about this yesterday, and I was kind of like, I removed. I don't know if you've got a Letterboxd account or.
A Letterboxd, yeah.
Letterboxd, yeah. I removed all my favorite films a while ago from the top of there because I was like, I just don't know if I agree with this. Like, and it's really hard. But yesterday I put Good Morning by Ozu up there. I watched that recently.
Did I just touched your forehead?
Is that it was I'd watched recently. I haven't watched many of his films. But I watched this, I've watched Tokyo Story, and I've watched I Was Born But, which I think Good Morning is kind of a slight remake of. And just his observations of familial interactions, like parents to children, children to parents, children to one another. It's just so spot on and absolutely beautiful. I was blown away by the film. It's just so subtle, but everything in it is just, I don't know what kind of direction he could have possibly given, if any, to those child actors to bring out such amazing performances of just two brothers getting along, the younger one mimicking the older one. And it's, again, stuff I've seen, I know that my own brothers, like in videos of like when we were kids, and nephews, and how they talk to their parents, and it's almost like they actually are a family. And then the neighbors gossiping amongst one another, and just like, and also the kind of stories that seem like high drama within a family unit, probably in real life, but you're watching it and they're kind of like, one of the storylines is in it is the kind of I can't quite remember, but it's kind of like a syndicate of some sort within the and the money's kind of gone missing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that somebody's forgotten to tell the other person that they've got the money and that they're going to give it to them, and it's kind of blown out of all proportion.
Oh yeah, of course, as it always does.
Yeah, but like watching it, you're kind of like, this is absolutely nothing. Like this isn't, but it's so interesting to watch those characters react to one another. But yeah, that's a film I've watched recently that I've kind of gone, it's kind of shot straight to the top of my like favorite films. Kind of just thought, oh, this is perfect filmmaking. It kind of makes me want to watch a lot more. He's one of the Japanese masters, but really want to watch a lot more of his films. But it's kind of getting hands on. We've got the BFI player here, but it's another subscription service. Going back, probably Taxi Driver. First time I saw Taxi Driver, I was blown away. I've seen Goodfellas before that, and I'd seen Casino, but it wasn't, and I love both those films, but it wasn't until I saw Taxi Driver and I was just like, okay, I kind of get why Scorsese has the kind of reputation as a filmmaker as he does.
Mm-hmm.
Watching it when I was, again, probably like 17, maybe a bit older actually. I didn't see it until maybe I was a bit older, but it's an absolute tour de force of just Robert. It's just of direction, of script, of acting. It's like when filmmaking is like clockwork, that's Taxi Driver to me. Just that everything in it is just kind of turned up to 10, turned up to maximum, and kind of working phenomenally.
You tell it's 11, and then shit hits the fan.
Yeah, it hits the fan. You kind of you can't quite believe what you're seeing, and it's just such a boiler of a film, like just all the way through Robert De Niro's performance. Some of my favorite films, I'd probably say, are films I would never watch again as well.
Yeah.
Festen by Thomas Vinterberg. Again, I don't know if you've heard of it or watched it, but it's
I've seen some Thomas Vinterberg, but I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, I think it's the first. It's kind of like his equivalent to Lars von Trier's The Idiots when he did the Dog Me 95 stuff. So it's all like fly on the wall, watching a family as it kind of implodes at this wedding. And my friend recommended that to me and was like, you must watch this film. So I went round and he watched it with me and was kind of just watching me watch it. But again, it's one of those films you kind of go, oh, I've never seen at that particular point in time. I was like, I've never seen anything like this before. Just, no kind of gimmicks. No, arguably Dog Me
is gimmicky, but yeah, I know you.
Gimmicky, but yeah, you know what I mean. Like everything kind of removed from the filmmaking. So, and then just allowed to play out But I'd never seen anything like that before. I'd watched Festen, so very much kind of controlled environments of filmmaking. Like I'm quite a fan of Nicholas. Never know which way it goes down. Nicholas Winding Refn.
Oh yeah. Drive.
Yeah, Drive. Neon Demon. I particularly liked it, but again, I think that's a film. I do have it on Blu-ray, but it's a film I'll watch sparingly because it just makes you feel a little bit gross. It kind of like films. Those are kind of ones that stuck with me. But again, I'll kind of would never kind of say, "Oh, this is my top pantheon of films," because generally, if I really like a film, there's always something maybe slightly different to another film, and I'll like another film because for another reason. It's kind of like, and then I might go back to a film and I'll revisit it and I'll go, oh, actually, I don't like this as much as I.
Yeah. You want to keep that memory there with what you have. I get that.
Yeah, I mean, I like being John Malkovich, having spoken about Spike Jonze. I went back like probably last year and watched it, and I didn't love it as much as on the first time I watched it, like probably 15 years ago now.
Right, yeah.
Trying to think on the spot.
No,
you asked this question to everybody, and I've kind of like completely drawn a blank of like, Leon's one of my favorites. Luc Besson, Fifth Element, I really like as well.
Those are probably my two favorites from him.
Yeah, I find him like his career has been like his very early stuff. I quite like because it's quite of its time. It's very early 90s and kind of the cinema de look, as it was called. But and then Leon is to say, is one of my favorite films and one of the films that got me into watching a vast array of cinema. I really like Fifth Element just because it's massive space opera. Yeah, it's crazy.
Space opera.
Chris Tucker again. I don't mind that too much. Sorry?
Where are those hairstyles now?
Yeah.
No, the 90s are coming back in fashion, so clearly the hairstyles need to come back too.
Ahead of his time by about 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, then kind of after that, for me at least, I found like maybe like hit and miss. Like I quite like Lucy, but then there's other films that he's made more recently, and I'm kind of like, oh.
Yeah, I get that.
The Family, I think that's the one with Robert De Niro, isn't it? But yeah.
So I guess thinking about some of those favorite films and filmmakers too, was there any particular filmmaker that you would like to, be if you ever were, an actor or maybe even just in like a scene or something, who would you like to work with?
I think, good question. So many for different reasons. I think though that probably if I had to pick one, David Lynch, just to be in the presence of him and him working. What kind of film would that be like? Well, who knows? Because what kind of film is a David Lynch film? But
it almost feels like it's almost like spontaneous and impromptu. What's going on? Like, I mean, obviously he has a plan in his head, and he's not going to share that plan. But it's like a process. He would get there, I feel like, and being present to that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So as you say, like watched a documentary, The Art Life, David Lynch, The Art Life. Watched that the other a couple of weeks ago. In him talking about his history and how he became a director and how he was a fine artist and a painter and how he's like, well, I'm not going to tell you how to interpret my films. I'm never going to tell you. It's up to you how to interpret. So he obviously knows, and knows where a lot of his ideas have come from. Or if he doesn't, he can probably reach in kind of. That's what the documentary's about quite a lot. But yeah, as you say, kind of just being in the middle of him figuring that out, or telling his crew and the actors and being part of that ensemble where he's kind of work it out.
Like the craft, right? Like it's like the process and like what's actually how it's moving and how it's working and coming together.
Yeah, for probably not to sound too grandiose, but like an artist at work.
Yeah.
But yeah, like someone who's actually, he's
a genius.
I mean, you could say that.
Yeah. I mean, in the realm of film, right? And he's a working artist, and he's So I get that, and I think this is a good segue into kind of the last question that I always like to ask. So I guess we've covered this, or maybe beat around the bush to it. But like, how is your passion for art and cinema, like how has that impacted your worldview and how your outlook on life?
I would say that it's opened me up to larger ideas. I think how it's impacted my life directly is that it's very much kind of the trajectory of my life has kind of been informed by. I wouldn't be doing the job I'm doing now if I hadn't gone to art college, and I hadn't gone to art college if I hadn't been so into film. Which in turn, and kind of having like kind of been opened up to kind of all kinds of cinema from my mid to late teens and onwards, kind of very much shaped my worldview in terms of just not being kind of myopic in what I'm consuming, kind of being open to anything really, kind of going, what's this? I'll watch that, I'll give it a try, I'll see. And then even if I've not necessarily enjoyed it, there's always something you take away from it. And especially, if you're talking, when we're kind of talking with our collections, or the kind of the more obscura or kind of arty films or world cinema. I know sometimes those are kind of synonymous or for some people, but for me, I just feel like just kind of experiences, and it's just what cinema is. It's kind of people taking the experiences, putting it onto celluloid or film or digital, and then kind of sharing it, hoping that somebody somewhere will watch it and take something from it. And I think that's the same as you say, like a single person making a film, all the way up to massive crews and blockbusters. No one makes a film to make a bad film. They're always wanting to create something of worth of art and give something. And I believe that of all films. But yeah, I do think that that's kind of the way I see it, and the way I see cinema and kind of the world. No one's making anything to necessarily detract from your time, or to make there's probably exceptions, make your world a worse place.
Yeah.
They always kind of want to share something.
There's always, I mean, even with, we could think of, I feel like, people who are trying to make ends meet for like money purposes, they're still sharing a message though, regardless.
Yeah.
And there is still an intent, and usually that intent is like, I want people to watch this. I want people to, interact with it in some regard. It doesn't have to necessarily mean they enjoy it, because I mean, I'm sure there's directors out there who like intentionally put out things that they don't want to enjoy, but they still want that attention, and regardless of how people interact with it, it's still a process, and it's still, and it's there's something that they're putting out there. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
you know, I generally believe that, you know, if something gets made, then, you know, and it's either in the cinema or it's on straight to video, even, that at some point somebody's kind of gone, has made the effort to, you know, there's people, there's artists, there's people, and there's craft and everything, and, you know, people have got up in the morning and gone to work and kind of to create something, and in intrinsically, I think, and, you know, with cinema, I don't know if it's necessarily idiosyncratic to cinema, but all to film, but they've kind of done the job, and they've crafted and made something, and then they've put it out into the world, and then people then can make of it as what they will,
right.
You know, whether they love it or they hate it, but it's still somebody's made it and put it out there. And I guess that's, you know, with fine art, well, you know, let's say fine art, but, you know, paintings, or I guess that's in this,
music,
this is very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Music, art, in general, people who are creating and putting something out there, to have that interaction. I actually also enjoy the way you said you have more of a, it's not like a myopic view. It's more of a, I feel like it's an optimistic way to look at things, you know, and I feel like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm alone in this, but I feel like a lot of people who are watching this right now, and I feel like a lot of us we're drawn to a lot of pessimistic things, but I feel like a lot of us are optimistic, and when it comes to our worldview, or at least how we're kind of trying to collect all these different stories, or at least even, I mean, not necessarily saying that it should be one way or the other, but I feel like, you know, more often than not, I feel like interacting with these pieces, I feel like make us better people, if that makes sense, or at least that's how we interact with the world, and that's how we process things. And I think that helps a lot.
Yeah.
So.
You watch something and you take what you will from it, and then that becomes essentially part of you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if it has given you something, and you can take that forth, and you can either, you know, in the simplest form, you can recommend it to someone, and in a larger sense, you can kind of go, if it's got a message that you believe in, or you can take that forth and kind of, it becomes part of your life, or, you know, or you can go, oh, I understand that now, I understand where that person's coming from, in that way it can shape you. So you kind of, the whole spectrum, I think, with cinema.
Well, I think this has been a fantastic conversation, Kenny. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
I hope I haven't been too pessimistic. I felt like about the James Bond.
Oh, no, not at all.
That's not quite what I mean, but yeah.
We're I mean, this whole thing, that's the reason I love these things, is because I love conversations, because it literally goes all over the place. And if anyone who's made it this far is watching this, and you know, has followed along or been in the right mindset to watch a conversation like this, I want to implore you and say thank you so much for watching this. You know, the invitation is open for people who want to join on these film journeys, because I would love to, you know, hear from all of you. But going back to Kenny, where can we find you?
As you said at the top, there's my YouTube channel, it's Kenny VFX, which is Kenny Jeffrey, which is the actual URL, or Ken XJ. Ken XJAY on all the social media, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. So,
well, excellent.
I am.
Do you have any final words for everybody?
Wow. Just keep watching and enjoying films. Really, you know, I love this medium, and I love cinema. And I hope that's come through in this conversation. And I'm just, you know, excited for what comes next and what else I can discover from the past. You know, you know, they're making them every day, and so there's always something new and exciting to come.
I think those are excellent words, and I can only agree. So
Cool.
For everyone watching, I hope you enjoyed our conversation, and I will be putting those links for Kenny's social media and also for his channel. down in the description down below. I hope you enjoyed this film journey. Like I said, if you're interested, let me know. Reach out. I'll definitely be putting my social media accounts down there as well. I want to say thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a little bit, and you can tell us a little bit about your film journey. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the conversation and what's going on in your life. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoy it. Give a like, comment down below, share, hit the notification bell, and we'll see you next time. I'm not jonesing around.